The draft guidelines from the General Medical Council contain rules to stop doctors talking about faith, make doctors recommend treatments like contraception or abortion they believe are morally wrong, and to ensure doctors offer treatment to patients with lifestyles they disapprove of, like alcoholics or drug takers. So, we ask now, should doctors be forced to act against conscience? Richard, Dr. Richard Scott, I mean, you're involved in this case at the moment, it's ongoing, but to cut a long story short, there are obviously very details about it we can't divulge for patient confidentiality. There was a patient of a different faith who had various problems which had not, conventional medicine had not solved, and you suggested, what does really work for you in your life, which is Christianity,
yes.
Might help him. And, well, everything hit the fan, didn't it?
It did, yes.
There was a complaint.
There was indeed a complaint, actually, by his mother, who wasn't in the consultation, because the patient reflected back to her that all I talked about was Jesus, which was quite inaccurate. I'd had a very lengthy consultation about his physical and mental issues before looking at faith. And first of all, I looked at his faith, which was different from mine, discovered that it wasn't actually helping at the moment, and then said, look, over the years as a GP, I've discovered not only in my own life, but in my patients' lives, people sitting in your chair, that hundreds of people have been massively helped by taking on aspects of the Christian faith, praying, going to church, and becoming Christians. And therefore, I offered him something which I was absolutely convinced would help him should he do so. Now, in this situation, one is purely the messenger. You're giving an offer to someone, no one's forced to do anything. I offered it to him, he didn't like it. That was absolutely his right. And 6 weeks later, I got a letter from the GMC.
If you went to a doctor who was a confirmed atheist, I don't know, if you went to Dr. Evan Harris or something like that, and he said, you're deluded and you think you've got an imaginary friend and you don't, would you be offended?
I wouldn't be offended, I'd be amused. and I think he'd be utterly wrong. It's very interesting, actually, when you look at...
He'd be utterly wrong to say that?
No. I personally think his view, I don't share his view. Right. He's welcome to say what he thinks.
I would be wrong to say it, wouldn't I? Because the GMC, and I'm on the BMA Medical Ethics Committee, but I should say there's a variety of views on that committee. I don't seek to speak for them. But the GMC is very clear that your first concern, your primary concern, should be the care of your patient. And what you're not allowed to do, it's very clear again, is impose your own personal beliefs, whether they're religious or political. Hang on, just let me finish what...
So let him finish.
It's very important, because I think raising them...
You can impose your point in a minute.
Is the precursor. You're not supposed to impose your personal beliefs on patients, especially when they're vulnerable. And what you've said in interviews on the radio, including on Nicky Campbell's Radio 5 programme last year, was that you've done this for hundreds, if not thousands of patients, that you said that to this gentleman, you said that you didn't think his faith could help him, and that only Jesus could help people with this stuff. Now, if you want to have that view, and you're entitled to have it, then you should be a preacher and a lay pastor. You shouldn't do it in the NHS GP surgery. It's very clear.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm absolutely delighted, actually, that you brought up exactly what you said, because first of all, you're not accurate. I didn't say the way you phrased it. What I said was that, bearing in mind that his own faith wasn't helping him, and that was at his own admission, I stated that Christianity, you might find, could help you more than your current faith is, and his current faith wasn't helping him. Second point is that I've seen...
In your view?
Excuse me, hang on a second. Evan, my chance, please. The second point is, over the 13 years I've been a GP, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of patients massively helped by faith. And that is because, in my view, and in their view, there is a God who really cares for them. Now, statistics show there have been over 1,200 papers written to show that health is massively helped by religion. And the great majority of these papers have been on the Christian religion. Excuse me a second, 80% of people have been hugely helped in these studies.
I won't excuse you if you misstate the evidence.
Let me bring Sarah in, because Sarah, you've got a pained expression on your face, Dr. Jarvis.
I have to say, I really do find this quite shocking. It's very clear that you're a caring doctor, and yes, as a doctor, a lot of our job is to work with our patients, to make relationships with our patients, to talk to our patients, and to help them. The fact is that first and foremost we are there as doctors. When somebody comes into my consulting room, they come to see me as a doctor. If I'm going to tell them something is right, then I need to be able to give them all the information. We work on a lot of programs, things like shared decision making, and all of it is about partnership with your doctor and giving them the evidence. Are there any randomized controlled trials apart from anything else that Christianity is better than anything else? Because actually, no, it absolutely absolutely is the point, because the fact is I have got 2 partners in my practice. I have 1 committed Muslim, practicing Muslim as a partner. I have 2, 1 lay preacher and 1 ordained vicar. They would never dream of bringing religion into the consultation.
Well, I would say,
be
Sarah,
wrong.
that they are not doing their job properly.
They're not doing their job.
No, in my 30 years,
They're
in my
doing
30
what the General
years
Medical
of
Council
general
has ordained they
practice,
must.
please hear me out. In my 30 years of general practice, I've trained up hundreds of medical students. One of the first things I say to them, actually, is that even if you're an atheist or a person of huge faith, religion is so important in the majority of your patients' lives that if you are not as comfortable in taking a spiritual history of that patient as you are a sexual history or medication history, you are failing them. Now, the students often look as gobsmacked as Sarah, but I can honestly say that in a week of practice, I've never had it the case that religious issues have not been raised by patients. Now, where are those patients going to go?
Totally shocked by what I'm hearing. I mean, are we going to the same doctors? Because I have 10 minutes maximum with mine. She's never taken
Probably they're not religious. That might be a problem.
Thank goodness they're not religious. I do not want to go with a medical problem and have my spiritual history or my religious questions.
But if you raise it,
Trevor, on other issues, there are other issues involved here, and I'd like to get into them if I may.
But the point
Trevor,
is,
for example, I know you're no longer practicing as a GP.
Indeed.
But supposing a 14 or 15-year-old girl came in, 14, 15-year-old came in, she was in a steady sexual relationship with her boyfriend, and she's already having sex, and she wants contraception, would you give it to her?
I think that exactly I would agree with what Sarah says, that, you know, my views don't come first.
So would you give her contraception?
It is the protection of the patient that's important.
So would you give her contraception?
So the first thing is to...
Would you give her contraception?
Look, if she is being abused by a
I didn't say that. That's not the scenario.
But you don't know unless you ask the questions. And my point is that this...
Consensual relationship, steady relationship, would you give her contraception?
Look, she's going to be unmarried, and if this GMC guidance is passed, I could lose my license to practice as a doctor because I will not give contraception to an underage unmarried girl. I ask you, is that fair? Is that fair?
I know, but let's get down to this.
How will you know, Evan, if it's in her best interest unless you ask the question?
But you're saying, no, it's a fair point. Yeah. You're saying you'd never do it, even if it was in her best interest in those circumstances. That means that you're putting your personal...
I'm saying I would not do it without investigating how old the boyfriend is, how many other sexual partners she's had.
Sarah Jarvis.
She comes back to you 6 months later pregnant.
Most of those who came back to me were girls who had been put on contraception by other doctors.
Okay, so wait a minute. Sarah Jarvis.
I've worked likewise for 21 years. Unlike you, I am still working as a GP and I see patients every day. And on a very regular basis, I get 15-and-a-half-year-olds coming in. Of course, there are occasions where they are being abused, where they are being coerced. The sad fact is, and I do think it is a sad fact, is that the vast majority of them have been having sex before they come and see me and are going to continue to have sex. There are absolutely clear guidelines. This is why we have guidelines like the Fraser Guidelines through the House of Lords. You have to try and ensure, you have to do your best for the patient as a doctor. You have to ensure that they understand what you're saying. You have to ensure that you cannot persuade them to come in with a responsible adult. And very often, actually, I can, after I've discussed it with them, persuade them to come back with their mum or another responsible adult.
But what
you
you're
have
saying
to ensure
is that I should lose my licence, or I am under threat of losing my licence, if on consideration of all things, and it's not only religious people who have consciences, thank goodness, atheists do as well. And if I'm an atheist doctor and a patient comes to me and says, I want you to refer me for religious circumcision, if I say no, then I think that equally these regulations should apply.
No, because the same rule applies. Trevor, the same rule is that you must be able to defend your actions. That's what you know. Just let me finish my point. That's what the GMC says. And if you don't refer for religious circumcision, of course you can defend your actions. There's a body of respected medical opinion that would say that that was not negligent or in any way wrong. The question you were asked is whether you would ever, whether you would ever consider it in the interests of your patient to prescribe an underage girl who's having consensual sex the pill. If the answer to that is never, for sincere, conscientious reasons, which I respect, then you cannot act as a doctor because you're never prepared to put the best interests of your patients first.
If the whole of my job revolved around aiding and abetting, as I would see it from my conscience point of view, underage sex. And I think with relation to the previous debate, there was a lot of talk about all girls being pre-groomed. I mean, how can we tut-tut about these Asian men?
Would it be better if she got pregnant?
But I'm saying 75% of young girls or more who came to see me in Wimbledon were already using contraception when they got pregnant. It's not lack of access, it's lack of boundary setting.
In which case they should have better education about reliable, long-acting contraception.
Well,
So does the sex
solution.
education community have to get its act in order?
Yeah.
This is the other question.
They certainly
Back
do.
there, what would you... Yes, I thought you might say that, Trevor.
Sort of following on
Good morning.
from that. Good morning. Surely, I mean, we live in such a society which is completely sexualized. Surely, if someone's coming to you, they're looking for the help. They're looking to, you know, protect themselves. Surely, as a doctor, you should not impose your views on them. Surely, you should be the one that should be the first to help.
Gentleman here, yeah, go on.
Yeah, 2 points. Firstly, as a Muslim couple, we did have consultations with committed Christian doctors and nurses. We've had conversations about God, and they encourage more faith in God. And as a Muslim couple, we actually appreciated the advice. It's not bad medical practice, because unlike what the GMC or the British Humanist Association say, because they fail to realise that psychology is a part of the healing process. And my second point is that even though I am British and you know, I've been in a Christian boarding school, I can see things as an outsider because I am a Muslim Bangladeshi, and what I see is a slow vaporization of Jewish Christian values from our society, where Christians feel isolated. And even as a Muslim, I feel very, very sad.
That's extremely helpful, actually.
That's your bigger platform, isn't
and
it?
I've got the Margate Muslims behind me supporting me. I've got a Muslim doctor in my practice absolutely supporting me on this.
That's actually good. I mean,
and this is crucial.
At the end of the day, what you're basically saying, you've got a stitch up there between Muslims, Christians and Jews saying, well, let's have more religion. But at the end of the day,
can I tell you why I do that?
this is great, but at the end of the day, if they want religious advice, if you want some counseling, go to a counselor. If you want to get some spiritual guidance, go to your goddamn church. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing. Go to your church or your mosque.
Inappropriate language.
True. Go to your church or your mosque to get that. There is a clear separation of jobs. You know, if I go to a doctor, I'm supposed to get medical advice. If I go to my church, I get the counseling.
So can I ask you a question? What if somebody came... Well, let me ask you another scenario. If somebody came saying, I feel I'm trapped in the wrong body, I feel like I should be a woman, I feel like I'm a man, I want to fulfill what I really am, can you put me on a course of hormones to enable me to be a woman? Would you?
And I do that, and it's difficult for me as a Christian to do so.
You do it?
I also prescribe underage contraception, although it's difficult for me to do that, because you have to judge, to a certain extent, which battles you want to fight as a Christian. Yeah. Those, I think, are my primary concern is the patient. By the way, that's why I bring up spiritual things. You know, we are not just... But hang on a second, Evan. We are not just... Hang on a second.
Is it true? You've said that you recommend the Alpha course
absolutely to
patients, and that a quarter of them go on it, and half of those are helped. Now, is it the job of a doctor ever to recommend an evangelical, shall we say, quite hardcore from a Christian point of view?
This is judgmental language, Evan. You are describing it in a totally distorted way.
I think it is evangelical. I think the Alpha course... Look it up.
Pretty evangelical as well.
Google it.
You know, as a Christian organisation, for example, one of the questions we get asked very often by potential clients is, oh, well, because we came from within the Catholic community originally, and in that sense that's where we broke out from, will religion be in the counting room? And we say no. Right. The people who are in our organisation are driven by personal faith. They want to reach out and help the community. But what we are very clear about is that you do not put your personal baggage in front of clients who've already got enough problems.
How would vulnerable people feel?
Oh, baggage. Sorry,
you don't like the word baggage, do you?
Absolutely not. When I take my car to the menders, I don't know what's wrong with it. Patients often don't realise, but as the WHO
the guy in the garage doesn't pray, does he?
No, he might do, who knows? But no, in all seriousness, no, I mean, the patients don't always realise, as the WHO have stated, that health is a mixture of physical, mental and spiritual. We have a spiritual aspect to all of us.
It's not up to you to tell a patient what religion they should follow.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I'm a man of faith, and I think faith has been marginalised by secularists and humanists and atheists, and you know, I'm on the opposite side to Evan on this. But you've got to behave a bit more responsibly, because if I went to my GP surgery and she started giving me lectures about religion, I think I'll be walking straight out.
Well,
if you went to your GP surgery and your GP was a Muslim and started talking to you about Islam, but you'd still feel uncomfortable
I
with
would
that.
feel uncomfortable.
Can I defend myself here? It's not marginalisation or victimisation to say that that religion should generally be kept out of the consulting room of the GP. That isn't intolerant. It's just saying, and in fact, I would just let me defend myself against your allegation. What the secular argument is that when you're delivering a public service, you need to do that without discrimination based on religion. You must have employers not discriminating, as I think your surgery does. As I understand it, you won't employ, you advertise for people who work in your surgery to be Christians. Is that right?
Is that right? Wrong.
I thought on your website it says that you only have committed...
We have 6 Christian partners. We have 4 non-Christian employed doctors. The great majority of our staff are not Christians. We have a very wide range of people.
What is true, Nicky? If the GMC says in these draft guidelines...
You're really worried about these draft guidelines?
I am worried because they do discriminate against the religious. They say that if you come to, it specifically says that your patients may not trust you if you are religious. Now that to me is a discriminatory insult. My patients may not trust me if I am an atheist. It's not just religious people who have conscience.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you for taking part. Next week, special debate. Is there a difference between a cult and a religion? Don't miss that. For now, goodbye from everyone here in West London. Have a great Sunday. Thank you for watching.